Good news, everybody. A hot news study has just dropped. A poll of 1,400 American adults has found that in the past year, 53% of them reported impulsively donating to charity through store checkout requests. Now, if this isn't a thing in your area, it's the practice of a cashier or a self-checkout machine, usually at a grocery store, asking if you would like to round up your total to donate some change to a specific charity, or to add $1 or more to your total for that charity, or to buy some token for that charity to represent your donation. That's nice, right? 53% of Americans are giving to charity at checkout. That's a good thing. Who could ever complain about something like that? Not me. Definitely not me. I would never do that. Okay, here's the deal. I found this study because every few months or so, a tweet I wrote in 2019 complaining about checkout charity gets more retweets and likes, and it's often because there's some kind of news regarding it. The first time it went viral, I used it as a launching point on this channel to talk about how evil corporations like Safeway are and how these corporations encourage weaker individual actions because making strong systemic changes would negatively impact their bottom line. I'll be honest, it was kind of a bummer of a video. I mean, I stand behind everything I said there. Individual action cannot compare to systemic change. These corporations do use your donations in order to market themselves as good guys, and these corporations are paying their executives so much more than their cashiers and other employees that they are directly responsible for income inequality that leads to many of society's ills. But with checkout charity in the news again this week, thanks to this study, I figured I would take on the issue again, but from a slightly different angle. Why checkout charity is good, actually. First of all, the study itself is fine. It's not groundbreaking, and it's only a little bit interesting to the average person. It's all self-reported, so, you need to keep in mind that many people will not necessarily be truthful or accurate in their answers. Also, that headline that 53% of people say they give at checkout means they've done it once in the previous year, not every time they go to the store. So that's how this might jibe with your own anecdotal experience of rarely donating at checkout or seeing anyone else donate at checkout. Also, that headline isn't really the main thrust of the study. They were hoping to get an idea of who donates at checkout, how they donate, and how educated they are about the charity in question. The researchers found that people were more likely to give if they're women, if they're Black, or if they're younger and don't have a college education. And that's interesting because it contrasts with the usual charitable giver who tends to be a white, older college graduate. That means that there's compelling evidence that a charity that wants to target a new demographic might have some success pairing up with a business to do checkout fundraising rather than relying on more traditional forms of fundraising. They also got an interesting response in how people tended to donate. There are various forms of checkout charity, as I mentioned. You could buy a little paper heart that they put on the wall with your name on it. You could give $1 or $2 extra on top of your total, or you could round up, which is the least amount you can give in each of these scenarios. It just means if your groceries come to $35.47, you can choose to donate 53 cents to make it an even $36. And because all of this is usually done on a little pin pad, you don't have to be embarrassed by giving such a paltry amount. And because you imagine millions of other people are doing the same thing, you can feel good about it, knowing that the charity in the end is going to get a decent sum of money, you hope. Rounding up is really interesting because it's the sort of thing people used to do all the time when like tipping waiters with cash to make it easier to just leave a round dollar amount in cash on the table. As a waiter, when I was in high school, that was kind of annoying because then I have to go to the register and take out a bunch of nickels. But I understood why people did it. Once credit cards became more and more common, the habit stuck. I used to tell myself that I continued to do it because it made the checkbook easier to balance. But that is also not a thing anyone does anymore. It turns out that humans just like round numbers, as researchers demonstrated in 2013 by showing that people tend to round off not just restaurant bills, but also self-serve gas stations. Whomst amongst us hasn't spent way too much energy trying to get the gas meter to hit exactly $20, even when you're paying with a credit card. And even when I have more than $20 in my checking account, which is rare. I found that study linked in this great article on NPR about this issue. As always, links to everything I talk about can be found in the transcript, linked in the doobly-doo below. So check that out if you'd like to see more hard data. But this new study definitely fits in with the consensus. People are more likely to give to charity at checkout if they're allowed to round up compared to just adding $1 or buying a token. As more and more charities and corporations take notice of that fact and institute it, checkout giving is continuing to grow, even as many people say that they find it annoying and intrusive to be asked, and they complain about it in viral social media posts that they're embarrassed about now because there's a typo, and they see the typo every time it goes viral again. It's very annoying. Anyway, all of this data shows that even though I hate these corporations, and I hate that they're using other people's donations to boost their own image, Checkout Charity really is a net benefit, with charities raising hundreds of millions of dollars, nearly $1 billion last year, and they weren't getting that from that audience previously. And the people who are giving are just out some pocket change that they don't necessarily notice. It's a win-win, right? Well, I hear what many of you are thinking, because again, every time my whiny tweet makes the rounds, I hear from people saying things like, yeah, but the corporations just use that money to get their own tax break. Or, yeah, but hardly any of that money actually goes to charity. And so I want to clear up a few things. Mainly, no, they don't. And sometimes it doesn't, respectively. Let me explain. It's a common myth that when you give your 53 cents to Safeway to give to the Human Fund, Safeway gets a break of 53 more cents off their taxes. That's demonstrably not true and not how taxes work. Please know I am not a tax professional and this is not tax advice, but when you donate 53 cents to a charity through Safeway, you can write that money off on your taxes. It's yours. This is actually one reason why I suspect wealthier and more educated people give larger official donations to charities instead of smaller donations at checkout, because nobody's keeping track of the pocket change they donate while buying donuts so they can write it off later. It's much easier to keep track of one large donation a month or a year and then write that off at the end of the year. Safeway cannot legally write off your donation through them. That's a myth. But there is a direct monetary way that Safeway benefits from your donation, and that's through something known as float. You see, Safeway collects everybody's pocket change for a day, a week, a year, whatever's written into their contract with the charity, and then they donate a bunch of it all at once. There's this period of time when they are holding a bunch of money that isn't theirs per se. This is the float, and they can invest that in a way that garners interest, which they get to then keep. So you donate 53 cents, the Human Fund eventually gets 53 cents, and in the meanwhile, Safeway collects the interest for however long they held on to it. It's a win-win-win. There's also this pervasive idea that when you donate 53 cents, Safeway and credit card processors and other middlemen take their cut, and the Human Fund only ends up getting like 12 cents, 10 of which then goes to their overhead, and only 2 of which will actually go to the humans being funded. But that's also not strictly true. Safeway doesn't take anything, and because it's lumped in with your larger bill at checkout, the credit card processor's fee is negligible. That just leaves us with what the actual charity is going to do with it, and that can vary wildly. In this most recent survey, most people who gave at checkout reported being familiar with the charity they were giving to, which is good. But it doesn't actually mean that they're truly educated about how that money is going to be used. For instance, most Americans are probably familiar with the Red Cross and have a positive attitude about them. But as I discussed last summer, that organization has a hell of a lot of problems with the way they utilize their vast amounts of funding. It can be really hard for the average person to figure out which charities are making the best use of the money they get. And Checkpoint Charity doesn't help that issue by giving people 3 seconds to make a decision with no other information but the name of the charity. That's the biggest sticking point for me. When I was in my early 20s, I was a door-to-door canvasser for a progressive action charity. And I was really bad at it because I'd knock on a door, explain our cause, which was good, lobbying to improve Medicare to cover prescription medication. And I would ask people for money. And a lot of people very politely said, yeah, no, I think I'd rather research your organization before I give you money, if that makes sense. And I'd be like, yeah, actually, that makes perfect sense. That's what I would do too. And I would leave without any money. And that's why I didn't last long at that job. Let me give you a great example of what happens when Checkout Charity goes wrong in that respect. In 2015, Canadian investigative reporters looked into the charity that customers were encouraged to donate to when they purchased products at Indigo, which is a large bookstore chain like Barnes & Noble or Borders. It includes the store's chapters and some other things. The Indigo Love of Reading Foundation is technically a separate nonprofit entity from Indigo's for-profit conglomeration. And they claim to give about $1.5 million to Canadian schools each year in the form of grants to help libraries buy books. That sounds great, except for the fact that the money they give to the schools comes in the form of basically a gift certificate that they can only spend at Indigo's stores where they had to pay full price for the books. Customers were donating money that was really just going to turn around and become extra profit for Indigo. It appears that that investigation paid off because today the Indigo Love of Reading Foundation says on their website that all schools can now get 30% off the books that they buy with foundation funds. Bullying works, people. So yeah, not all charities are equal, but if you really are familiar with the charity being offered at checkout and you like them and you want to toss them your extra change, the only downside is that the corporation gets a PR boost and probably some interest. Sure, if you're actually going to spend time researching charities and making a more substantial donation that you can write off later, that's probably better. But I'm not going to let perfect be the enemy of good. If it's easier and more likely that you'll toss some change at checkout, go for it. Just don't be swayed later when Walmart is bragging in press releases about their charitable giving. They still suck. The people who gave the money are the ones who are charitable and good. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.